I see you. Your eyes. Your hands. Your chips. Everything. So I don't need to see your cards. We play at fulltailpoker.com.
Diego Cortez.
Adam Schoenfeld.
Welcome to the Scoop.
Full Tilt Poker.
Brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. And Barry Shulman is hot in the world of poker. We had him on last week. Look for it on Card Player TV, and we'll just roll into part 2.
I wanted to ask you about that with one thing with Daniel. What you guys had a roller coaster battle in the heads up where it started out you were down 3-1 or 2-1, and then you were ahead 4-1. And now you're even, and now the climactic but not final hand comes up where it's jack high flop and all the money goes in, and Daniel has a pair of jacks with a queen kicker and you have aces.
Right.
And then the jack came off right on the turn. We saw some video. You didn't flinch. How did you feel at the time?
Not very good. No, Shulmans don't flinch. We don't hoop and holler when we win. We don't kick chairs and throw chairs when we lose. That's not our style.
And then when the ace came, again, you did not react. So you proved
Correct.
that over both.
But I felt a lot better when the ace came.
Right.
You hit Alan at the rail. She was providing all the emotion for the Shulman family.
We do cheer in
She
the
was flinching.
stands.
and that's appropriate. That's
We feel very strongly about that. We don't think players should be celebrating at the table. And we do think that fans should be celebrating and rooting in it.
So we're all looking forward to seeing the tournament on ESPN, because following it on the internet, even though the reporting was very good, you're just getting the hand reports and you don't really have a good feel for the dynamic, especially when you were heads up. Can you tell us about some of the key hands, or at least some of the dynamic between you and Daniel? The one hand that turned out to be decisive was where you had pocket aces, Daniel had queen jack, flop came with a jack and 2 diamonds. You bet and he raised and you moved in on him, and he thought for a long time, at least according to the reports, and then he called. And usually when a hand like that comes down, there's been other hands leading up to it, but what was going on there at the table? What is it that we're going to see when we see the video, or maybe which we won't see when they show the video, but which was going through your mind?
Well, you will see that hand.
That one for
TV.
sure.
You'll see that hand on TV.
But what were some of the bigger hands leading up to that? We know that you made a flush.
What was
in a
the
crucial
context?
point. Daniel had aces about 5 times in the heads up.
Yeah.
And
well,
one of them
first of all, there are 4 or 5 key hands for me.
Okay.
I'll just rattle them off, and
Please.
you guys can decide whatever you want to do with it. The day before, Daniel was sitting to my right, and he was either on the button and I was in the small blind, or he was in small blind and I was big blind, but it was just the 2 of us.
Okay.
And he had a hand with 8s that he raised, and I moved all in with 4s, and he showed the 8s and he mucked them, and he could have just knocked me out of the tournament there. But
And did you show him the 4s or not?
no, I didn't show anything the whole
So you
tournament.
preserved your tight image there,
Right.
as opposed to trying to rattle them. by
Correctly
showing
did not
them.
show.
Correct. I never showed anything.
Right.
Okay.
Not once that I can recall during the tournament.
Well, the counter argument
Now-
is, in that instance, you might be able to really rattle them by showing them.
Well, except I don't do that. A lot of guys,
Yeah, that's not your style.
that isn't my style. I don't show bluffs. I don't. Now, if somebody asks to see it, were you bluffing? I'll say, you want to see it? Then I show it to them.
If the guy who was bluffed,
If
not
they're
someone else
asking
on the
me.
table.
No,
Right.
if that guy asks me. That's the only time I show. But Daniel, the reason I raised in that particular instance, I told you I wasn't getting a lot of hands, and I had a very good image, and Daniel doesn't like to put his tournament on the line heads up with a pair of eights. Remember, this is the day before, and I knew he wasn't going to call unless he had like aces or kings, and so I'm not saying he made the right laydown. It just happens that I had him beat.
Right.
So, and I would have laid down the eight. If it was in reverse, and he would have raised, I would have laid down the eights.
Right.
So that was nothing, and it felt kind of good. You know how that works, given that he showed it.
Right.
Because he showed it like,
well, when you make
look at this neat laydown.
When you make a guy make a laydown, that feels like you're playing poker.
Then there was another hand that evening where somebody bet and Chris Muir moved all in, and I had jacks, and I had my jacks in the pot. Chris ends up showing the queens, but I mucked my jacks without even thinking about it. Chris was playing fabulously, by the way. Boy, he played a great tournament.
And you didn't show that instance.
I never showed anything.
Yeah.
So
I'll keep asking.
We don't, but you can keep asking if you want.
No, but I have a question. Were there any hands that you showed that you didn't have? Just kidding. Go ahead.
But the most fun, as it relates to Dan, now, it's all fun for me because I ended up winning the tournament, and that's fun, and it's lucky and all that kind of stuff. The most fun was when we were heads up, and there was one hand where I forget the whole hand, other than it looked like Daniel had a hand he raised, and then he bet the flop, and I kind of had nothing. I don't even know what I was doing in there. And then the six paired the board, and then he bet and I moved all in. And he said, "Oh my God, look at this cooler!" And he's showing all his fans his hand, and it's terrible, and he mucks it. And I had absolutely nothing. He would have just broke me if he called that.
And then he made some.
That's pretty deep in the. He knew that but he was talking about the cooler, so that was fun. Only because he was mentioning what a cooler that he had.
So when you made that play, I mean, that's a high risk, high reward play, cold bluff. I mean, what inspired you to make that play? What read did you have, or what had led up to that? I mean, how did you know that was the right play?
Well, in retrospect, I know because he laid the hand down, and had he called, I would have known it was the wrong play. But he just wasn't calling. I mean, he was not playing big pots. Right. Period.
So if if a scared card came, you were going to make a play.
Yeah.
It wasn't a physical read or anything else on him.
Absolutely correct. 100. Not. Well, unless people talk about reads like if guy's pulling his ear and this and that.
Yeah.
I think reads, because I'm not good at those kind of tells. Mm-hmm. But there's other reads of how a person's playing style is. And you know what kind of hands they're calling with and not calling with. Right. And if a person has a narrow range of hands they're calling with, is different than if they have a broad range of hands they're calling with.
This is more from betting patterns and
exactly.
I mean, one of the criticisms of Daniel, who is one of the best players of all time, I believe, is that he has some physical tells, and he's even acknowledged that. But you're saying that's not your strength, so you weren't doing that at all.
No, I just knew how he was playing, and that's his style. And by the way, he's been very, very successful playing that way. And incidentally, Phil Hellmuth plays that way. It's a great style. It's different than the internet go crazy style.
Yeah.
Now, are you going to? I'm
trying to get that style.
I read a press release today that Jeff has fired Phil Hellmuth as his coach, and you're now his coach.
Well, I'm trying to learn how they play. Those guys, they both have a very similar style that
I got another press release that Phil hasn't been fired, but that Barry's also joined up, but that he really strove for a tough deal, Jeff.
Yeah, I don't like Phil's deal. I want a tougher deal.
Almost whenever Jeff wins, he has to pay Barry if he wins.
One of the I'm not sure we should say that.
I thought that was already the case.
One of the name players in this world came up to me during the tournament, and he asked how much Phil had to pay to become Jeff's coach.
Pretty good. So
okay, but let me tell you,
the hands.
We were talking about some interesting hands.
Yeah.
I was very proud of a couple hands against Praz. Now he's like.
He's a bracelet winner. Wasn't really familiar.
Yeah, and he's a big popular guy, and they have the name for this group in England that's not the Hendon Mob, but like the London Pack or Rat. I don't know.
Very original.
Yeah, but it's these young hotshot guys that everybody loves, and he's one of them. Well, I had played at his table for 3 days in a row, and he laid every single hand down to me when I raised. Even though he's very, very aggressive, because I never played any hands, as I told you. That's the way it came down.
But he figures the old man, I'm laying down. He's got it.
Yeah. So then I I must admit I was on a stone cold bluff again because I didn't have any cards, and I did a check raise bluff with him, and this time he moved all in. But remember we talked about the old days I used to do these check raises and I'd put myself all in and I'd be in trouble. I purposely measured my chips. I left myself with $1 million. It was $1,035,000 to be precise, knowing that if I had to lay it down I would, but knowing that I could double up. There was enough that I could double up.
But you put in more than two, right? I mean, you put in like 2/3 of your stack.
And folded.
And folded. It was a check raise bluff. Not my favorite thing to have to do, but I'm prepared to do it. I learned that one from my son Jeff.
So you gave the appearance of being pot committed by putting in 2/3 of your chips.
Yes.
But you let yourself survive.
I gave the appearance of being pot committed, which led me to believe that he had me beat.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially since I was on a stone cold bluff.
Right.
So
That's
there
awesome.
I go. Now,
was there any reaction from Praz or from the table? Because when a guy puts in 2/3 of his stack and then folds,
yeah, the react. Remember,
surprising.
he's the hometown favorite there.
Yeah.
We're playing in London. They go crazy because now he takes the chip lead, I believe.
Right.
Not too long after that, I'm still playing very solid hands. Now, when I say I was on stone cold bluff and had nothing, I probably had like an ace jack of spades, or I had legitimate starting hands all the time.
Right.
Not too long after that, I have the king jack of hearts, and he has a king 4 offsuit, and a king comes on the flop, and I check raise him all in when the king comes, and he calls me in a heartbeat, and that was the end of him. He was crippled, and I'm sure he called me in a heartbeat because of that setup play that I had done early. I was quite proud of that. So that was a fun hand too. But when you win, you get.
Right.
I mean, good things happen. You don't lose with your ace kings to ace queens when you win.
Course.
I never won with the ace queens against the ace kings, but I didn't lose.
You avoid the bad beats, the folders and such. But that's why I was curious about that decisive hand with the aces, because you read about a hand, but you don't know all the context around it. I mean, Daniel really put his tournament on the line, even though he wasn't all in. He was crippled after the hand where you had the aces.
Yes.
And he called with a queen jack.
He could only beat a bluff or a draw.
Sure, but you think the hands that led up to it influenced his call?
Well, obviously, in his opinion, they did, according to his blog, because he had time to reflect on it, and then he wrote a blog, and he said he had to call because he had already put in 900,000. If he had to, in my opinion, if he thinks he had to call, it should have been because he thought the percentages were on his side, that I had a draw or a bluff, because he still had about 3.5 million or so, or 4 million. He pretty much.
Well, it changed the dynamic of the match. If he lays down there, he's behind.
Barely.
Not by a lot.
Yeah, and remember, he had the momentum at that point.
Now, on the other hand, if he wins that hand, if you're on a draw and you miss, or you're on a bluff, or you.
Well, then tournament's over.
Yeah, the tournament's over. And that's tempting too, because, from his standpoint also, I mean, yes, you could have a draw. I don't think you would have a cold bluff, but in that situation,
you could have a lesser queen.
You could have a pair. You could have it was a jack.
No, I can't.
You could.
Well,
don't tell people that you can't.
Sorry.
Have a jack 10 or something, or.
I say you could.
You can say I can't.
Yeah. Now just.
I'm telling you, I can't. By the way I was playing, I could have had a draw. I could have had an ace.
A huge draw.
I could not have had top pair.
Now.
I could have. I guess I could have had an ace kicker.
In Daniel's own words, this is from his concurrent Twitter. While the tournament was going on, it was on his mind that he had a commercial to shoot in a few hours. Do you think that was affecting him?
Yes. And I can tell you, earlier on in this interview, you asked me about, you don't have a history of being patient and this and that. I must say that way too often I'm playing a tournament and spending time talking to the office and all that stuff. And that's why one of the reasons pros do better than amateurs is it's their job, and that's what they're focused on. And during this tournament, during this night, I was focused on winning this tournament, and Daniel was looking at his watch. He said, I got a car picking me up in 3 hours. I have a car picking me up in 2 hours. And I can relate to that.
Right.
And I mean, he's a great, great, great player, and I'm not saying that's why he made the call, but I wonder, I can tell you if it was 4 hours earlier, whether it was the right call or not, if it was 4 hours earlier, the way he plays, he wouldn't have made the call.
It can't be good. It probably didn't have an effect, but it could have, and it can't be good to have that in your mind, regardless.
No, it's better to have nothing to do.
But he's also a consummate professional. And so, I mean, Daniel can be talking to the crowd and looking at his hand and looking and knowing he has a commercial and this and that. I mean, the guy's a professional poker player, so it's
Daniel's
not like
won tournaments. I'm sorry, Barry. He's won tournaments in these same circumstances because Daniel always has a million things to do.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's good. He's just plain good. I was fortunate that aces beat a pair of jacks.
I noticed that, and this is not surprising. Daniel's a super popular guy with world fame, so probably 98% of the crowd was vocally rooting for Daniel. And did that rattle you at all? Did that have any effect on you? Did you want to be the giant slayer, even though he's not really a giant?
Not literally.
Yeah.
I would say it gave me a little more incentive. It was kind of like a David and Goliath thing. It's not just that they were rooting for him, but he went in with the chip lead, which took a little bit of pressure off of me.
Well, he came in with a few chips final table.
To start,
once he
right.
got the heads
Oh,
up,
no, I mean when
chips.
we were heads up.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, at final table, believe me, when we started the day of the final table, I wasn't worrying about Daniel. I'm worried about Barry. You know, it's just, you got to see what happens. Now, when we were heads up, I remember going like this and saying, okay, time to get down to business. I had, the only thing I didn't want to do is look like a fool on television.
Right.
So, again, I was worried a little bit about my ego. I didn't want to go out real stupidly.
Right.
So, I was going to just try to get a few chips. And we went up, and I did something that has never happened in my entire career. And that is, a lady came in, the final lady dealer came in, and I went over to Alan and I said, I've lost my mojo. This lady's got a twitch in the way she deals the cards. It's going to kill me.
Right.
And all of a sudden, 5 hands later, I was ahead of Daniel like 3-1, and we were even. And I knew I was a dead duck, and I am not superstitious.
Right.
That has never happened to me in my entire life. But she made up for it when that ace came out.
So yeah, you weren't saying that it was superstition, but just the twitch was bothering you to where it was going to work against you.
Well, yeah, I probably talked myself right into it.
It's a distraction. Once you get distracted by something like that, it's when you need
Oh,
to focus, it's a problem.
It was the weirdest dealing I've ever seen.
But one thing, maybe this is just the same as what you were talking about before, but you were way ahead in chips. Heads up 4-1.
Well, first I was way behind.
No, I realize. But
then
at one
I
point,
notched it up.
At one point, you steadily built up. You're 4-1 ahead in chips, and you're about, and the blinds are relatively high. So at this point, you can realistically, in one hand, finish off the match. And there's a lot of pressure on Daniel to play a hand. Now he managed to win a couple of hands and inch his way back to where he took a slight lead on you, which psychologically we all know is very tough. And when you're tired and you've been playing for all these hours and you have the whole crowd all excited, it's super tough. And in fact, I was on the phone with Mark Gregorich, and he said, this is a tough spot here, just for Barry. And you came back from that right away. I mean, did that focus you, or was there a chance where this would just be so demoralizing that it would take you off your game? Or what was your mindset at that point?
When you have the momentum, it's a heck of a lot easier than when the other guy has the momentum.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
just brutal.
It's no fun. I mean, when we started heads up and I kept moving up the stack, that was kind of easy and fun. And then all of a sudden, when Daniel got and I was in the lead, and then he took the lead, it was tough.
Did you just try to concentrate on not playing big hands right then and inch your way back?
I just said to myself, okay, big deal. Just you have to focus. Now, one thing that did happen when it got late, there was a hand. It's interesting. Both of us there was a certain time, probably a full hour before it was over, where my eyes started like watering, and it was like 4 a.m. It wasn't easy. I mean, I kept my focus, but I had to tell myself to keep my focus.
Right.
And Daniel represented, and I totally believe him that he thought there was a 3 on the board on one hand when there was a pair of deuces.
Right.
And I believe him. And
Daniel doesn't lie about that.
Yeah. And I started saying to myself, before you do even though we were playing fast, like you say, make sure the clubs are clubs and the spades are spades, and that kind of thing.
I mean, you misread one hand that you reacted, and it was reported on.
Poker is physically grueling, and I'm sure it was that way for Daniel, but you're in your 60s. It's got to, was your back hurting? Were you aware of any other physical discomfort other than your eyes?
No. My back was not hurting. The lights are hot.
Yeah.
No, the lights are hot,
right.
And so I kept very well hydrated. There were reports that I was all caffeined up. That's not true whatsoever. I had 1 cup of coffee and 1 Coke the whole day.
So now you win the bracelet.
It would be
After the
okay if you had
dramatic
coffee,
hand.
just for the record.
Right.
I know. I was doing green tea and honey in case there's any green tea and
I
honey
want it on the
sponsors
record.
out there.
I wanted on the
not have
record. I had
coffee.
no coffee. I had 1 Coke. I was all methed up.
Right.
But other than that, I was fine.
I use honey for my
Excellent.
upperness.
Now you win the bracelet, and were there any thoughts at that point of throwing it in the garbage or doing anything dramatic with it?
Don't be silly.
Oh, no one would be silly enough to say something.
Yeah, who would
like that.
suggest that? Only a fool. It's a prestigious bracelet.
No.
Okay.
Actually, I thought it would be funny, and I said it to Al, and I said, "Wouldn't this be funny?" And she said, "No,
You never seriously contemplated doing it as a joke or as a
no."
commentary. And what
I'm happy to win bracelets.
But you see, that's one thing that, ironically, given the mini controversy with Jeff's statements, you won a bracelet in 2001, and I've seen you wear it many, many times.
Only at the World Series. I have a.
Oh, all right.
I have
Well,
a
at the World
philosophy.
Series.
Right, but
Now,
that's
by the way, I have
7 years.
I have a philosophy about that. I mean, I don't go wearing it around town, but I do believe, or even in regular tournaments. But I believe the World Series has gotten so big, and there's so many amateurs who come. They want to come and see the name players.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the reasons they pay their $10,000 is to sit next to Phil Ivey and do that. And so I wear it during the World Series.
So this WSOP E bracelet, you treasure, but you're not wearing it. You'll wear it back.
Well,
to
first of
Europe
all, my
next
wife
year.
stole it, and she wore it.
Oh, I see.
So I don't know if I'll ever get it back.
Fair enough.
So how do you feel?
See, this is why you guys get the big bucks. You ask stupid questions. How do you think I feel? I feel good.
I feel like Barry's been setting that up.
He told me to say that.
Yeah. How do I feel? I feel great.
Good enough. Barry, on that note, it really has been a pleasure. And,
Thank you for coming down to Card Player for this interview.
Thanks for coming to town. No, but I mean, I know this means a lot to you. You love to play, and we're excited for you too.
Yeah, so what do you think? Do you think I should retire so they can't say anything bad about me anymore?
They're going to say something bad about you anyway.
Right.
Just keep
you might as
doing
well
it.
keep winning tournaments.
Keep doing what you do.
Yeah, okay. You think they'll ever take me seriously?
Does it matter?
I think the better they don't,
Yeah.
because you keep, maybe you're using that against them. But
Yeah.
2
Okay.
bracelets now, and Jeff in the November 9 final table in the
Yeah.
main event for the 2nd time. This is a strong time for the Shulmans.
Yeah, I'll try to keep ahead of them. I'll try to pick one up next summer.
Adam and I need to become Shulmans and start winning tournaments
It
again.
feels good to be a Shulman.
Well, you're kind of part of the family, both of you, both on personal basis
No, I'm not
and
kidding.
business basis.
Feels good
so
to be a Shulman.
Thank you very much.
Nice to have you around.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you. We appreciate also the, anyway.
My pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on The Scoop, brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. Write to us at The Scoop at cardplayer.com.
I'm about to tell you a story. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Fact or fiction, doesn't matter. It's all how I tell it. We play at fulltiltpoker.com.